as we like to have it, I think. And so we'll go right into our program. And the program is the joy of being a double multiplier, operating the CQ Worldwide Saturday Contest from Ascension Island by Alan Higby, which many of you know. And you can sort of read about his career in the shot. I do not know Alan, but I'm looking forward to the presentation. I mean, I just love these kind of things. And he's had good mentors and licensed several things. And I suspect we'll hear more about his overseas operating than his modest discussion as his little speaker bio he gave his show. So without further ado, Alan, why don't you take over and show us your wares? We're all looking forward to it.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, I wanted to mention I was able to go to Ascension Island in 2016 for the contest, thanks to my great longtime friend, Oliver Swenningson, W6 November Victor. He and I have known each other since high school, and we went on, for both of us, our first de-expedition. We went to Andorra in 1969. It's a whole story in itself. Stayed in touch. He's a very loyal friend, as you'll see going into this. He has operated from Ascension. He's operated from all over the world, literally, actually. He's not a big showboat or anything about it, but he shows up a lot of places, a lot of times, very consistent. And he's been to, let's see, this was his 6th time to Ascension. And when you see the story of how this goes, you'll see how hard it is to get to Ascension. And it's literally almost impossible now. It will come back online eventually. He was friends in the Bay Area, where I was raised, with, and me too, friends with Jim Niger, who's now at November 6 Tango Juliet, and Jim operated from Ascension. I'm just giving you the heritage and the link to how I happened to get into this and how Oliver was. Jim Niger operated as Zulu Delta 8 Zulu for many years because he was working as a contractor down there for various space-related things. Okay, let me get started here. Ascension is there. It's 1,000 miles off the coast of Africa, 1,400 miles from the coast of Brazil. And the interesting thing is how you get there. But I do want to say that Ascension, ZD8, St. Helena is ZD7, Tristan da Cunha is ZD9, we all know that. The government, this is a UK overseas territory, Ascension is, and St. Helena is where the government actually is. It's the government of St. Helena that runs the place. And so the police are from St. Helena police, and there are no inhabitants on Ascension. Everybody is a temporary person there. You can, if you work there, you have to be working or you have to leave. That's the way it is. And most of the people who work there are from St. Helena, plus the contractors. So there's Royal Air Force, United States Air Force, European Space Agency, British Broadcasting Corporation, the GCHQ, which is the British version of our NSA, and probably some other contractors, okay? This is the island. You can see it's 10 kilometers across about, so that's 6 miles by, say, 6 miles. And the place where we were operating was up here on Green Mountain, and more about that. This is the capital over here, Georgetown, named after King George V, I guess, I don't know. Interesting, this airfield is called Wide Awake Air Force, airport or airstrip. This was built in World War II by the United States. How did they get back there? By the United States to support ferrying boats, or excuse me, ferrying airplanes over to Europe. They came, I guess they went down to Brazil, came across, stopped here, refueled, went over to Africa, and then up into Europe. That's the way I think it was. There was an old NASA site here. Anyway, more about the detail. Okay, so here's their flag, their crest, got turtles. These birds are all over the place. There's quite a history of sailing ships. Here's my license, Zulu Delta 8 Victor. I made probably 1,500 contacts with my own call. I made about 4,000 contacts. In the contest, we used Oliver's call, ZD8 Whiskey. Okay, so how do you get there? This is the interesting thing. There's no commercial flights that go there. The RAF has a contract with a company that takes their troops, so their Royal Marines, from England. And you'll see up here is Oxford. London's back over here. Here's Bryce Norton Air Force Base, BZZ, okay? And Oliver had gone down earlier, and so I followed him on flight radar and took screenshots so I could trace how it went. Oh, you can see his plane taking off here. He's in one of these, it's an Airbus 330, filled with Royal Marines, however many fit in there, 300 people or 250 people. And there's spots for civilians, about 10 people can go. And you have to book it. And anyway, we were lucky to get on there and have a seat. And so then it flies south and goes, that's the way it goes over Las Palmas and down the coast. And you'll see down here is Ascension. Okay, this is the plane. This has just arrived at Wide Awake Air Force Base or Airfield. This is what the tanker looked like. A lot of the guys, I think everybody got off. They refuel and they put them back on and take the Royal Marines down to the Falklands. You can see it's a volcanic island, pretty dry. That's a real problem, especially for this guy. This is a picture of, for me, a fascinating character. Captain William Dampier. He was in 1701, this guy was commanding the HMS Roebuck, 100-foot long, and that's a pretty short boat, but he had gone south from England, around the tip of Africa, across the Indian Ocean to Indonesia on a survey trip to see what he could find and explore. On the return trip, the vessel was having a problem. It was infested with ship worms and it was leaking. They were like termites of the sea. And he was struggling to stay afloat on the way back. And he got around the Ascension Island area, and while passing by, the leaks became more serious and he couldn't keep afloat. He got into a bay and sank. And he wrecked the boat there, and the people got off, his crew got off, and they were 4 months on this uninhabited island with no water, literally no water that they could find. They looked all around and they finally found a spring, which is still a spring, to get some water. It's up kind of coming out of the mountains where we were. It's called Dampers Spring. Anyway, interestingly enough, in 2001, there's this picture there. In 2001, so how many years after? I got to do the math. 300 years after he was first there, some divers went down to look for his ship. They thought they could find it, and they did. And they brought up, that's the ship's bell, and that's some porcelain from Indonesia. And this is some sort of a shell that is from Indonesia. They can tell that that's what it's from. That's my ex-YL who was with me, Jane. Here's Jane and Oliver walking down to Comfortless Cove. And this is an interesting place. But you can see how gnarly this volcanic stuff is. Comfortless Cove is where the cable came ashore. They had, in 1922, this was the network of undersea cables carrying telegraph. and they came ashore here. And here's a picture of them bringing the cable ashore from the ship as they were laying the cable, and they brought it ashore and brought it up. And there's another picture. And this is pretty much the same. I've compared the pictures to the more recent ones, and it's the same rocks, you see. And the hut is different. Whoops, excuse me. Right. So that's one of the old cables from 1922 or whenever it was, earlier probably. You can see where they're going up. That's kind of a conduit there. And it's kind of a beautiful beach. But this beach has a history. It's interesting. There was the Bonetta, a ship, the Bonetta had, and I hope I got it right, I think it was yellow fever, was infecting everybody on the ship, and they put them into quarantine, and many of them died. It used to be called Comfort Cove, but when so many of those people died, they now call it Comfortless Cove, changed the name. Here is an Air Force station, some kind of a radar thing, and they've turned it into Moonbase 1 Topless Beach, and there's some golf balls that got thrown out there. This is the Great Circle routes. So you can see going to the north is into the hotspot of Europe and into the US. It's in a hop, skip, and a jump into Africa and South America. So that's the location. There are lots of, this is a prime radio location. Just a second, I wanted to. A prime radio location, so there's a lot of communications that have been set up there. They've decided that this is a good place. So we're not the only communicators down there. The BBC has, they now have it where they receive their signals, their programming from the satellite, and then they send it out mostly to Africa, they said, and more at the end about the BBC. We take a tour of, I've got pictures of the inside of their transmission, their transmitter stuff and their antennas. They've got a lot of curtain arrays, pretty cool stuff. This is where we were, up in here. You'll see this building, the Red Lion building, but we were right there in an older house that was built in 1820 something. Okay, an old map, I won't go into it. Another shot of our location. You can see the road that goes up. It's a drivable road, but it's kind of gnarly, and I preferred not to be the driver, but sometimes I was, and it's right-hand drive, so but there's no traffic, so it's not a problem. And up on top there is Green Mountain National Park. And until very recently, a few years ago, until then, the warden for it was Stead. His name is Stead, ZD8 Sierra. But he retired, and since he wasn't going to be working there anymore, he moved back to where he was from on St. Helena. So now he's ZD7S, and he's becoming more active. Okay, this is the house we stayed in. You'll see there's a trail system. I said this was a park, and there was a trail system, and these Rupert's is a trail, and Kronk's is a trail. Gets overgrown really quickly, so you got to fight your way through sometimes. But Stead had put this sign up the year before: caution, mind the antenna ground wires, ham radio contest in progress. For access to Kronk's and Rupert, walk behind the path tape. And there was yellow kind of police tape stuck out there. So now let's look at here's the house. You can see where the antenna wires go in there. Again, this was, I think, the 6th time that Oliver had been there, so he had this thing pretty well dialed. He had taken a lot of the equipment that had been left over from Jim Niger being there, and and kind of built on it. So each time he made a trip down, he'd bring more stuff, and built up quite an array, and he'd leave it there. He had people that would help store it for him while he was not there. Here's from the 1800s, a family that was living in this, what they call the garden cottage. And there's another shot. You begin to see over here the drop off. This is a 2,000-foot drop off to the Atlantic Ocean, and I guess that's looking towards North America. You begin to see the antennas here. There were 2 tri-banders, 2 A3s, and then a pair of 40-meter verticals that were phased. And as I said, water is an issue. So that's a catchment basin system to catch the rainwater off there. Vertical with radials, more radials. That's our rental car, a real beater, I might say. Oh, and here's the tape to guide the hikers around. More of that. Over in here, that's the other tri-bander, another vertical. But over in here is a 20-meter Moxon. Okay, that's Oliver's. Down over here is the BBC transmission location. Okay, more pictures of that. More of the same. You might note that these have rotors on them. Okay, so he's really built this thing up over the years, kind of gathered his equipment, and somehow it all comes together. This is a 160-meter dipole that's hung up in there somehow. This is a 17-meter dipole that was just thrown up there. It was very effective because of the drop-off, as you can see. Again, looking down at the BBC transmission location, zoomed in a little bit. Some big-ass antennas. Great. This is my favorite picture from up there, and I used that as a QSL card. Down here, this is kind of just moving over a little bit, just down, still down below us, is the town or settlement of 2 boats. And these are all housing for people that work at the BBC or people that work here. This is GCHQ, like I said, the British NSA type thing. And up here, you can see they have some log periodics, and that's what they look like. This is looking short path, you might say. This is, Oliver was unaccompanied on this trip, so he was kind of fast and loose, and he hung his laundry out there. I'm sure his wife wouldn't have let him do that. Here, we're about to take a hike here, I think, and go through here and hike up to the top of Green Mountain. This is called Red Lion. It's non-functional. It's just there. It used to be something, I don't know, but there's the Moxon. Jane and I and Oliver are going for a hike, and we're heading up the hill. We're up on the hill now. We're looking back down. Down here is 3 greenhouses. They take, and there's the Moxon. They take their vegetation very seriously. They're looking to keep out invasive species and foster the development of indigenous species. We'll take a look inside that greenhouse a little bit later. Looking over here, the U.S. Air Force station, I think if I got it right, is this one. The RAF has a housing area here, and this is the airstrip, Wide Awake Airfield. Wide awake because that's the sound the birds seem to make. That's their call. Okay, now that's Jane. We're hiking, and there's a whole thing, there's a whole series of trails around, and people go to these letter boxes, and they'll see some other ones, and you go in and you get a stamp, and you can put it in your passport book, not your real passport, but they have a book to foster use of the trails. And the idea of the letter boxes goes way back to the earliest ship times. They would drop messages off in a letterbox hidden in the rocks, and for one ship to pass a message to another or something like that. So that's the history of the letterboxes. Oliver's pointing something out to Jane. We're on a trail. We're going to walk around. Okay, a couple of things here. This is a barracks, not in use anymore. It was a Marine barracks, I think. Up here on the hill is a tower, maybe two of them. And ZD8VHF is the call sign for a beacon put in by a G several years, quite a few years back. And I think it's still operating. And I do not, for anybody who cares about it, it is 50.032.5, and they run 10 watts from up there. And I know people that have heard it. I haven't, but now all this concrete down here is a catchment basin. We'll see another picture of it, but this was an idea that you could catch water and gather it, because water is very tough. Now you're looking at, and you'll see there's a lot of greenery up here now, and a lot of that wasn't naturally there, but it was brought in. Plants were brought in to try to get vegetation up on top of the mountain to then have moisture gather and drop up there, and seems to have worked. They brought in plant species from Kew Gardens in London. And so you'll see at the top, it's pretty thick. Okay, we're heading up to Green Mountain, up to the top. There's another letterbox. That's a real classic one. You see the bamboo? That was all brought in and put there years ago in the 1800s. Okay. Now, I thought it would be a great idea to, I'm not a soda guy. Summit's on the air, but I looked it up and I thought it would be really cool. I have a KX2 and I took it with me, and a little wire, and I thought it would be really interesting to set up and make some soda contacts from a place that hadn't been on before. Well, I learned about soda that it has to be a registered place. It has to have an association and all of that. So I scrambled before we went to get it all approved and to start an association and get certified. And anyway, I missed the boat. Somebody was out of town when I first submitted it. The timeline got out of control. So the approval came through 2 days before we left, and I never got on. So anyway, this is an 8-point soda location right here. I could have easily taken my KX2 up there. Okay, now we're down over on the other side of Wide Awake Field on the south side of the island, and the sooty turns are all over the place. And this is all volcanic rock, and we're looking up on the other side of the mountain. So our location is on the other side of those hills, but you see how prominent it is, and you can see the change in vegetation as you go up. Looking south to the South Pole, I guess, or to St. Helena. A place like Ascension is kind of the end of the line for a lot of equipment, and this is where it gets parked. The towers that either fell down or were changed out, and this is where they go and die. Some DF equipment, the obligatory shell thing, that's Oliver's call, and you just take out one line, one V, and you got my call. Got these crabs run around, not too bad. They don't bother you, not like some places. This is the old NASA tracking station site. They have a plaque up for it. Okay, this was kind of interesting. The U.S. Air Force has a base there. It's a detachment from Schriever Air Force Base in Colorado Springs, 21st something or other. Well, this is a Thanksgiving. Oliver said, you know, they have a Thanksgiving dinner at the Ascension Island Air Force Station. Why don't we go? And this is they don't celebrate Thanksgiving in the UK, but you know, if the Air Force is going to throw a party, why not come? So everybody, not the whole island, technically is supposed to be people who are contractors and family of contractors, but literally everybody goes. And there we are. getting ready. This is pre-contest, getting cranked up. Lots of food. I like ice cream, and that's what we're doing. I asked about this flag being at half-mast. I had no idea what it was about. And somebody, I asked somebody, and he said, well, I think it was the Secretary of Defense or something. I don't know what it was. And I came later to know it was Melvin Laird. So as we were getting ready, fast forward to the end of the trip, we're about ready to leave. We're waiting for the plane. And I see the commander. Oh, excuse me. I'd asked the commander at this dinner. He was making the rounds, the Air Force major or lieutenant colonel or whatever he was. Why is the flag at half-mast? He says, I don't know, somebody important. They just told me to put it down, and so it's down. So I saw him as we were leaving, and I had seen it up again. And I said, now it's up. Do you know who it was for, and why is it up? And he said, oh, I don't know, but Fidel Castro died, and I had to put it up because I didn't want people to think I had it down for Fidel Castro. So here's Georgetown, the capital. They do get some yacht traffic, but once in a while, not really. I think there's a sailboat out there, and they were doing some kind of filming of a underwater documentary or something. There's the sailboat out there. Looking over the harbor again. You see, I told you the St. Helena Police Service, Ascension Island Station. This is another Soda Hill up here. It's a one-pointer though. We were in November, it was a month before Christmas, but they had all the Christmas decorations up there, you see, because they have to think far in advance to get their packages and cards up to the UK or wherever they're going. This is the Obsidian Hotel. I don't think it's open right now because there's no traffic or anything, and contractors will come there and stay. And these were some British bird watchers that were down there, but really hardly anybody ever goes there for that kind of thing. We're going to take a hike. You kind of get to look around. That's looking back up to where the house was we were operating from and staying in. That behind Oliver, that's Oliver, is the RAF housing area. Okay, now we're getting ready. This is getting ready for the contest. N6TJ is real excited about, very knowledgeable and very enthusiastic contester. And we're about ready to start. It's literally midnight down there, very close to midnight. And the phone rings in this, somehow he knew the number for the garden house up on the hill. And it's Jim Niger calling to, with words of encouragement and strategy tips. And he said, by all means, start on 7055. That's where I always start. It'll do you real well. So that's why I'm set up there. I hadn't cleared the log, so that's why that is that way. Interestingly enough, that's us operating. We're operating multi-2, two-man multi-2, unassisted, because we had no internet up there, and high power. And Oliver, being the loyal friend that he is, he said, well, you haven't operated from here before. What bands, how do you want to work this? How do you want to work it? And if you had your dream thing come true, what would it be? And I said, my dream would be, I operate 40 and 15. He says, yeah, you do that. And I'll do 160, 80, 20, and 10. And that's what we did. So here's the switch for the 40-meter deal. Sorry, to just get details there. The keyboard, 59936. That's the double mult, because I don't know that anybody else was on in 36. Got all your sticky things. I only needed to tune for 40 and 15. And into the contest. That was quick, huh? The hits just kept on coming. People just kept calling, and things slowed down on 15 and go to 40. This is awesome. Really, really exciting. So here's our totals. You know, I guess if we'd been assisted, we could have got some more, but we were pretty busy the whole way. Very exciting. Now we're going to go hike around. One of the things that's interesting about the habitation, the use of Ascension Island is that the Brits are there because in 1815, Napoleon was exiled to St. Helena. And the Brits were worried that the French might try to sail down, use Ascension Island as a staging area, and then go rescue him, go rescue Napoleon. So they put a garrison of soldiers and Navy to stand watch and to intercept the French if they came down. And so part of that was building that house that we were in, building the building that's next to it, and then the fort or the barracks up on top. So we're taking a walk around. This is another look at that catchment basin. And the patrols, the Marine patrols would walk through this tunnel as they went all around the top of the island to look out at the sea. And see, you can see the surf line down there below. And they would walk through this tunnel. Okay, and now we're getting back over there, and we're going to go inside one of the greenhouses. Okay, and I might have got out of order a little bit. I'm sorry. 1840, I think that says. I can't remember. Elliott Pass. Now we're at the BBC transmitting station. This is their old Marconi rig. I think that's the driver. I'm pretty sure it is. These tank coils have to be moved in and out by hand. To change bands, they have to move them out, and they're stashed there. Kind of a physical job. Just a change of lighting. Okay, now here we're in the new rig, and that guy is not a ham, but he's a very nice guy. He's from St. Helena, and he's a tech. He had a good time talking to us about ham radio stuff. Okay. This is their frequency control. So that's their transmitting frequency at the moment. Their shop, obviously they need parts if they're down there that far away. Something breaks. IMAX all over the place, right? This is the array of antenna feed lines and stuff like that. We'll go outside in a second, but they have interlocks on them. Now we're outside. Oliver and I, and I've forgotten his name now, are joking about, wouldn't we like to have this? And obviously the answer is yes. These antennas have, roughly about 15 dB of gain, and they're steerable to some degree, as you can imagine. I think these are the ones that are 300. Let me see if I have a number here. The tallest, and I think these are the tallest, 126 meters high. So 300, 400 feet high. We're walking away. We're down on the beach. This is where the turtles come in and have made those pits to lay their eggs, but they weren't doing it at the time. Those buildings out there are a station belonging to I'm pretty sure the European Space Agency has a facility there. This guy here is, we're down to go fishing, and this guy and I can't remember his name. He's not a ham, but he's a rigger. So he's the guy that climbs those 400-foot towers for the BBC. We're going out to a boat. Looking back, you see our hill, our mountain is in clouds, and it often is. So we're trying to get tuna. That's what we're hoping to get, is tuna. Oliver's got a tuna on the line, we hope. And it's a big fight though. And it took a long time. I mean, like one of these big Ernest Hemingway movies or something. Not movie, but stories. It turned out not to be a tuna. It was a shark, and you can see the fin as he got it up close, and obviously we just cut the line. We went back to the dock, and it was getting dark at that time, but there are lots of shark around. You can see multiple ones. And for some reason, they have moved in around Ascension. They haven't always been there, but in the last few years, there's lots of them there. All right, so this was another adventure. This was a great idea by Oliver. I wasn't even thinking about this. The 60-meter band had not been operated from ZD8 before, 660. And there are lots of people that are interested in checking that one off. So Oliver came up with this idea that we'll each, he made this list. You can see the handwriting is different. The numbers, he just put down 50. We're gonna each make 50 contacts with my call and 50 contacts with his call, and then we're gonna stop. The idea is that we're gonna keep it rare. We don't wanna overdo this. So, whoops. And the reason I'm handwriting the logs is because it wouldn't go into wind test. Wind test didn't have 60 meters on it. So I had to do it this way. It was fun. It was fun. Now we're packing up. Yeah. He's got all this stuff. He got the old boxes, quite a deconstruction operation. Did it pretty quickly though. I would say probably got it done in 3 hours maybe. Put all the stuff, the antennas in there, the amplifiers. And you can see the history. It used to belong to Jim Niger, and all this stuff then became Marco, N5KO, no, N5KO and Oliver. No, N5ZO, pardon me. So we're going down. Now we're going to put it into an Air Force facility. Oliver knows a guy, his name is Patrick, who has charge of this and the key for it. So he says, okay, you can just store it in there. And at the end, Oliver has done this multiple years. He's gotten so much help from all the locals that he hosts a dinner at the Obsidian Hotel. She is the, she's the customs officer, and she's married to Patrick over here. And Patrick is the guy that has the storage facility. Here's the rigger and his wife. I think that's right. She works for GCHQ and loaned us some bikes. Mary is her name, but she's gonna have, her boyfriend is ZD8S, but he had to go back to St. Helena, and she's gonna go, I think probably by now she's gone. I did want to say that 4 months after we left, the runway at Wide Awake Air Force Base became unusable for those big Airbus 330s. And so that shuttle flight that we rode down was stopped, and they stopped coming into Ascension. It started going into Cape Verde to ferry the Royal Marines back and forth to the Falklands. So there's really no way to fly down that way that we did anymore. But they're repairing it. Apparently, I just checked the government website, and it looked like they have got a contractor lined up and to fix the runway. But who knows? There's a mail boat that comes up from St. Helena, very infrequent, like maybe a couple of times a month, I'm not sure. And there's a US military that has a much smaller plane with supplies that you couldn't get on though. You can't ride that down there. It comes 2 times a month from Patrick Air Force Base in Florida. So I think, so we're taking the flight back, and that's Bryce Norton, and we're back in England now, and voila.